Who is the Kaiser? What are his motivations? What drives his people to wage war across Europa? Hey guys, Trip here. A lot of you have been asking me for some lore videos for Fear and Hunger, and I think this is a good place to start. Fear and Hunger is one of those settings you really want to ease your way into. If I started this series ranting about alien elder gods and political conspiracy theories, you'd probably take me for a madman. So let's start by analyzing a single character and his potential motivations. The Kaiser is a key character within the Fear and Hunger franchise. In the first game, he's a knight known as Lagarde. He's kind of a living MacGuffin for the first portion of the game. Based on which character you play, you come to the dungeons to either rescue him or to kill him. In the second game, he becomes a rogue political leader known as the Kaiser, rampaging across the continent with an army of apparent psychopaths. Put simply, the Kaiser is deeply tied to the occult lore of the franchise. I think that by understanding the Kaiser, we might come one step closer to understanding what's truly going on in this setting. Speaking of setting, Fear and Hunger's lore is, by its nature, pretty vague. A lot of it relies on implications, biased news articles, religious dogma, and misremembered history. Now, that doesn't mean the lore is all nonsense. In fact, one of the most fascinating things about this setting is how much it makes sense once you put the pieces together. But it also means that sometimes we simply aren't given enough information to make rock-solid conclusions. Because of that, some of this video will rely on my own speculation, but I'll try my best to keep my theories within the realm of plausibility. I said this in the last episode, but Fear and Hunger is a series made for lore nerds like us. It's a world of dark secrets, Lovecraftian myth, and mankind's struggle to learn and grow amidst the darkness of the cosmos. It's a series that practically begs the player to analyze, speculate, and theorize, just like the characters do in the games. What I'm saying is, this series goes deep, and it touches on a lot of occult and esoteric concepts that may be a bit difficult to understand at first. It's the sort of story that sends my mind spiraling into theories. Whenever I think about this series, I start to wonder if I've gotten smarter, or if I've simply lost my mind. Not gonna lie, but by the end of this episode, you might feel the same way. Fair warning. But don't worry, confusion is the first step toward enlightenment. So why don't you follow me on this journey into the twisted world of Fear and Hunger? As always, if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, let me know in the comments, and be sure to leave a like so the dark gods of YouTube will have mercy on my soul. So what are the Kaiser's motivations? What are his beliefs? Why should we care? Let's take a look. From the beginning of the game, it's clear that the Kaiser's ideology is key to the plot, but it's something we never get a clear answer on. All we're directly told is how inspirational his philosophy seems to be, and that the rest of the world thinks his ideas are insane. Lastly, we know his plans in the war have something to do with the mysterious machine god known as Logic. Throughout the game, details of the Kaiser's plans are constantly hinted at but never directly explained. But what if I told you his core beliefs are lying in plain sight? What if the truth behind the Kaiser lies within the very color of his iconic robes? In my opinion, if you want to understand the motivations of this game's antagonist, we need to start by understanding a different group, the mysterious Yellow Mages. The Yellow Mages are another key faction in the world of Fear and Hunger. Put simply, they're villainous wizards who pursue power for its own sake. Their way of life was codified by the ancient sorcerer Nasra, and they view him with both fear and respect. They worship no gods and seek to achieve enlightenment on their own terms. Core to Yellow Mage's philosophy is the belief that change is the only constant in the universe. To them, chaos, revolution, disaster, and ideological conflict are all inevitable parts of the human condition. Change can lead to progress or to ruin, but trying to stifle change is a fool's errand and hinders one's personal growth. This is a recurring concept brought up throughout the games, but it's a mindset most commonly associated with Nasra and his Yellow Mages. In the second game, if you play as Osa, the Yellow Mage, you get to interact with Nasra quite a bit, and the two of them go into detail about their philosophy. Nasra serves as a sort of living encyclopedia, explaining esoteric concepts to the player and hinting at important clues that might otherwise be missed. Notably, when Osa explains his philosophy about chaos and change, he uses almost the exact same words as the Kaiser toward the end of the game. But what does this have to do with the Kaiser? Is he just another Yellow Mage? Well, not quite. But this is when I started to notice all the connections between the Kaiser, Nasra, and the Yellow Mages. But in retrospect, it should have been obvious. Believe it or not, the Kaiser and Nasra have a history together. Their paths crossed once before, in the infamous dungeons of fear and hunger. Back then, the Kaiser was a legendary knight named Lagarde, prophesied to guide humanity to a golden age. Frustrated by what he saw as corrupt leaders throughout the world, Lagarde hatched a plan to make himself a new god, reigning over a utopian kingdom for all mankind. But Lagarde wasn't the first to try this. In fact, countless heroes and villains throughout human history have tried the same thing. This long list of so-called new gods include ancient philosophers, legendary fellowships, and even Nasra himself. All of them sought to change the world, and all of them eventually failed, only to be overthrown by a new set of heroes who've come to take their place, resulting in an endless cycle of stagnation. We keep making the same mistakes over and over again, and so far, no one's been able to break the cycle. At some point, Nasra and Lagarde met within the depths of the dungeon, where Nasra mocked Lagarde's feeble attempts at enlightenment, and told him the dark truth behind the gods. You see, every one of these would-be saviors eventually traveled to Mahabra, the mythical city of the true gods, the old gods. Finding the city empty, these heroes would eventually realize the gods abandoned humanity long ago. Inevitably, they decide to take their place, sitting upon the empty throne of the gods and receiving a portion of their eldritch power. But this power comes at a cost. By sitting on the throne, the so-called new gods become bound to the will of the old gods, preventing their ascension to true greatness and leaving humanity trapped within its own stagnation. In short, Lagarde's entire quest has been repeated throughout human history. It's a trap left behind by the old gods to allow humanity a shadow of godhood, but ultimately keeping us in our place. So let's bring this back to Lagarde, or the Kaiser as he's now known. We can't know with certainty what happened in the first game. That's left up to the player. Whether Lagarde made it to Mahabra, or if he failed along the way, at some point he realized his noble quest was a dead end. But his commitment to mankind's ascension never wavered. If humanity would be saved, we couldn't rely on the old gods and the scraps of power they toss in our direction. We also couldn't rely on a single human savior to fix everything. If humanity is to evolve, we'll need to do it on our own terms, and we'll need to do it together. Lagarde's history becomes fuzzy at this point, but somewhere between the first and second games, he begins to accept Nasra's general worldview. Reality is chaos, and the human condition can never be contained or controlled. So, instead of fighting the waves of chaos and conflict, why not embrace them? Sure, you can't control chaos, but you can certainly influence it, nudge it in certain directions. It's a bit like surfing, of all things. You can't control the wave, but you can control what you do on it. This becomes the core of Lagarde's worldview going forward, and it might even be the impetus for the Second Great War. We'll get into that in another episode. But while Lagarde accepts the worldview of the Yellow Mages, he comes to some very different conclusions. Unlike the Yellow Mages, the Kaiser isn't some amoral, self-obsessed Sith Lord. Deep down, he's still the same knight we found bound and tortured in the dungeons of fear and hunger. He's still determined to save humanity from its own corruption and from the capricious whims of alien gods. But he no longer harbors the delusions of grandeur he had in his youth. Judging from his dialogue, he doesn't seem to care about his own reputation, personal power, or even his own well-being. The Kaiser will pave the way for humanity's ascension, even if he has to become a monster in the process. And so, the Kaiser sets out to do just that. He eventually takes control of a country called Bremen, using populist rhetoric and a vaguely described ideology to inspire loyalty from its people. He then rallies his people to conquer neighboring countries, raising a massive army to wage war across the continent. But with all that said, we really don't know much about the Bremen Empire. How much did the Kaiser tell his people about the cosmic order? What are they fighting for? What do they even believe? Now, this is just a theory, but perhaps the answer is simpler than we think. The easiest answer is that the Kaiser's men believe what he believes, albeit perhaps a watered-down version, more digestible for the unenlightened masses. In short, the Kaiser's men believe that chaos and discord are how nations evolve. Peace is stagnation, and the only way to change the world is to embrace the madness. Bremen's soldiers seem to revel in violence, especially in the upper ranks, but they also seem strangely optimistic about the future, as though the atrocities they're committing are contributing to a greater good. It's entirely possible that they view themselves as heroes, agents of chaos sent to usher forth the Kaiser's new world order. They don't need to know the Kaiser's specific plans. All they need is justification for their own depravity, a purpose to the madness. So now we have a handle on the Kaiser's history, his ideology, and the beliefs of his people. But what are his specific plans? Why did he target the Eastern Union and the backwater city of Preville? What does any of this have to do with his mission to save mankind? We really don't know the specifics of the Kaiser's plans, but we know it involves the mysterious machine god, Logic. Logic was a secret project, presumably created by the Eastern Union. We know little about the Union, except that it's a coalition between this world's version of the Ottoman Empire and an Eastern European country named Vostroya. They're also at war with several other world powers, including the Bremen Empire. Are they fascists? Communists? Something else entirely? We really don't know. What we do know is that beneath Preheville, a city once controlled by the Eastern Union, are a series of tunnels, bunkers, and machines. This arcane technology is, in truth, the body of an artificial god, designed to process and fulfill all of humanity's collective wants and needs. A god for humanity, by humanity. It's unclear what role Logic had in the Second Great War, but it seems to be the linchpin to the Kaiser's plans. Is this what everyone's been fighting over? The keys to a mechanical god? A journalist named Karin Sauer suspects the war was instigated by a secret society called the New Gods, who covertly influence the world. But this just leaves more questions than answers. Did the New Gods instigate this war on purpose? Or is some sort of infighting going on? Is the Kaiser part of this cabal of new gods? Or is he a rogue element? Whatever the case, there must have been some sort of conflict between the Kaiser and whoever controls Project Logic. This all comes to a head toward the end of the game, in a tense conversation between Nasra, Ossa, and the Kaiser himself. It's implied that the Kaiser was manipulating us from the start. He knew we'd be curious about the various bunkers beneath the city, and he was counting on us to help him activate the machine god. It seems the Kaiser's entire goal in the war was to take control of the project for unknown reasons. By the time we reach the heart of the machine, it appears he's achieved his goals. He refuses to let anyone near the newborn god for fear that they may interfere with his plans. This is when the Kaiser hints at a lot of things I've been speculating on in this video. The Kaiser repeats, almost word for word, the beliefs of the Yellow Mages, his desire to save humanity, and his dark philosophy of using chaos to break the cycles of human stagnation. I'm sure this is all getting pretty heady, but let me tell you why this matters. The core conflict of fear and hunger revolves around humanity's constant attempts to achieve enlightenment in a universe that is actively hostile to us. Humanity as a whole is trying to evolve, but the universe wants us to stay in our place. But really now, can you blame us for trying? I mean, just look at how terrifying this setting can be. Fact is, if humanity doesn't get its act together, we will be destroyed by this Lovecraftian cosmic order. This isn't a matter of seeking power for the sake of it. It's a matter of human survival. Lagarde tried to save humanity playing by the old god's rules, and he failed miserably, just like every would-be hero who came before him. But this time, he'll succeed by setting aside his own ego. He'll allow himself to become the exact kind of tyrannical leader he despised in his youth. He will force humanity to ride the tide of chaos, sending us screaming toward our next stage of development. At the end of the game, the player and the Kaiser reach an impasse. Nasra has wanted this man dead for centuries. Ossa is on a quest for enlightenment, and no one is going to stand in his way. The Kaiser can't let anyone interfere with his plans for the machine god. He holds no ill will toward the player, but they need to die. He's even willing to carry our souls to the artificial heaven he just created. He's merciful like that, but there's no avoiding it. It's time to kill each other. By this point, the player is likely very powerful, and actually stands a chance against this legendary demigod. If you're clever enough, if you're enlightened enough, you might just survive this encounter. Finally, Lagarde, the Kaiser, the Mad Yellow King, the Butcher from Bremen, lies defeated. His body liquefies and melts into the ground. Yeah, he's not dead. We'll talk about this another time, but just trust me. But that's the story of the Kaiser so far. Until the next game comes out, we really have no way of knowing. No. Wait, there's still one massive loose end here. What did the Kaiser do to Logic? What was all of this for? Why does it matter who controls the project when it's activated, be it the Eastern Union or the Bremen Empire? Seriously, this is the one piece of the puzzle that's been driving me crazy. We know damn near everything about the Kaiser. His history, his philosophy. Hell, I feel like I know the man's social security number at this point, but I still can't tell you how anything he did in this game furthered his goals. Well, let's just back up and review what we've learned. It's implied throughout the game that a group of world leaders were fighting over Logic, and that the current war was caused, at least in part, by their infighting. So I think we can safely conclude that everyone behind this conflict, Kaiser included, had their own agenda for the newborn god. Their own plot to shape the human race by abusing this digital deity. And that alone should be terrifying, even if we never learn the Kaiser's specific plans. Think about it. Logic's purpose is to analyze the collective human mind. It uses that data to find solutions for human problems by steering the flow of information. It's like a ghost in the machine of human communication. But the very fact that the new gods were fighting over logic, it implies that the god of mankind could be manipulated by a handful of elites. It implies that, in the wrong hands, this god could manipulate the flow of information. It could alter mankind's opinions and manufacture consent for all kinds of atrocities. Think about it. All our beliefs, our communities, the information we consume, even our very minds, all manipulated by the privileged few. I don't know. Something about that scares me more than any villain's master plan. It makes my skin crawl. So whether it's the Kaiser, the Eastern Union, or hell, even the sulfur cultists, it doesn't really matter what they planned on doing with logic. What matters is that they're able to manipulate it in the first place. That's what concerns me the most. But on the other hand, left to its own devices, logic could achieve an almost utopian future for mankind. But that'll have to wait for a future video. We may never learn the Kaiser's exact plans for logic. Maybe he sabotaged it in some way. Maybe he instilled his own chaotic beliefs onto the newborn god. What if the Kaiser's plan was to free the machine god from outside influence, preventing anyone from fully controlling humanity's collective mind? It's certainly something to consider, if nothing else. But for real this time, that's the story of the Kaisers so far. It's a story of ambition, desperation, and existential dread amidst the darkness of the cosmos. And, honestly, it's a story that reminds me why I love Fear and Hunger. A lot of you guys wonder why I latch on to worlds with such dark and violent themes. Worlds like 40K, Vampire the Masquerade, or even Cyberpunk. And the answer is, I often don't. If a story feels completely hopeless, if I feel like my time and sanity are being wasted, I often won't even bother with it. What inspires me about dark stories is when people fight back. As far as I'm concerned, Fear and Hunger isn't a story about hopelessness. Sure, it's absolutely fucking terrifying, but that's not the point. Sure, the darkness is there, but it's the glimmers of hope that shine through the darkness. That's what keeps me going, at least. I think this is what people mean when they use the term grimdark. It's that glimmer of defiance that makes failure so painful and success so satisfying. That's the beauty of a dark story, and it's what makes Fear and Hunger so endearing to me. But hey, that's just my opinion. Look, we're getting sidetracked, so I'm just gonna end this video with some questions. What do you guys think of all this? Is the Kaiser a deluded villain? A well-meaning anti-hero? Or is he somewhere in between? What do you think he did to logic? Will the machine god be a positive force for humanity? Or will it drag us down into a digital hellscape of our own making? Would you guys like a video where I explain in detail what logic even is? Let me know in the comments. As you can tell, I had to Skin? Did I just say skin? I've been playing too many violent video games. As you can tell, I had to skim over a lot of stuff, so let me know if you want more info on anything we've discussed so far. By the way, new videos coming up. Still thinking about Starfield. Not good thoughts. Stay tuned. Oh, and check me out on twitch.tv/psychotripstreams. Link in the description. I'll probably be streaming once this video goes live, so come say hi. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.